Welcome to the Seniors Flourish podcast, where it's all about helping occupational therapy practitioners working with older adults be the best they can be. And now your host, Mandy Chamberlain.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Seniors Flourish podcast. I'm Mandy Chamberlain, occupational therapist, and I am the host of the show talking about occupational therapy and working with the older adult. So this month, it's been amazing. I am partnering up with Cindy Kraft and Dee Cornetti from Cornetti and Kraft Healthcare Solutions to provide you the ultimate guide to simplify your documentation. This is part 4, episode 4 of the series. And we are talking today about the plan portion of documentation. It's really wrapping up and giving a good understanding of what should be really included in the plan and why is that an important part of documentation. So the previous weeks we talked about the subjective portion, the objective portion, the assessment. And then, like I said, today is all about the plan portion of documentation. They're always here to give you some great principles to help make your documentation simple yet effective. And if you're not familiar with who Cornetti and Kraft are, let me give you a little background and to explain to you why they are the perfect people to be talking to you about documentation. So Cornetti and Kraft Healthcare Solutions has over 70 years of clinical management and ownership experience. Cornetti and Kraft is a healthcare consulting company with proven expertise in interdisciplinary patient-centered care management to fortify your agency's fiscal security. So with professional accountability, leadership, fiscal responsibility, integrity, evidence-based clinical practice strategies, and regulatory expertise, they are committed to an individualized customer experience. They build solutions that fit your needs. So their goal is to ensure therapy remains an integral component of the medical home model through an ever-changing healthcare paradigm. They accomplish this through education, consultation, and interfacing with regulatory bodies and payer sources to provide our clients mentoring, teaching, training, tools, and management resources. We are also going to be hosting a webinar. So Cindy and Dee are going to be at this live webinar on July 26th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'd love for you to join us. They're going to be answering documentation questions for an entire hour. Anything that's been burning documentation questions from everything of just the everyday documentation notes, goals, regulations, the whole shabam. So if you just want to listen through the episode, and at the end of the episode, I'll give you the links and everything you need to do to sign up for that. It's something you definitely don't want to miss. I definitely don't want to miss it. I think it's going to be amazing. And just answer some of those questions. I get questions all the time from people about documentation. And I would say in general, I'm pretty good, but I am nowhere near the expertise that Cindy Kraft and Dee Cornetti have and are sharing with you this month. So please sit on back, listen up, and learn something about the plan portion of documentation.
Hi, I'm Cindy Kraft.
And I'm Dee Cornetti.
And we are excited to be back with you, continuing the conversation of the ultimate guide to simplify your documentation by tackling the last portion of the SOAP note, the P part, which, we kind of talked about it and said there's actually a couple different components to that. Plan has a couple different things in it. So we're going to break it apart and start first, Dee, by talking about goals. I know that that's something you love to read goals. I mean, come on, you had that plan at one time. The patient had, 101 goals between nursing and therapy and all that. So a very comprehensive plan. But one of the two things we really get hit on, and that started in 2011 when they tweaked some of our regulations specific to home health. They started really going after the terms of measurable and meaningful, specifically to goal statements. How would you interpret that? I mean, it sounds like it should be fairly simple, but we see in the documentation that we read, maybe it's not that simple.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for clarifying what the P section is and calling it plan, because for a while, if we went right into goals, I was going to say the P stands for PU. Anyway, that's terrible. I shouldn't say that, but we all know it's true. Okay, so this idea about measurable and meaningful. Here's what I tell people. You think you write good goals? Go take your last 5 assessments. Take out all patient identifying information, okay, and just read the goals. If you can't figure out who that chart is on, then it isn't both measurable and meaningful. What we tend to find is that we use phrases, right, Cindy? We come in and we say we're going to be independent with transfers. We're going to be able to climb the steps with supervision using, one handrail and a single point cane, and that we're going to have lower extremity strength, and we're going to be, we're going to reduce our fall risk. We're going to have this kind of endurance.
Oh, don't forget my favorite, independent with a home program.
Yeah, especially if we include the ankle pumps, right? And,
yes.
and so my idea is, isn't that all one thing behind that? Well, they got to be able to get up out of the chair, walk over, climb up that flight of stairs, and get back to the second floor of their house, where their bedroom and their bathroom is, okay? And so if we we use a template where we talk about who's the focus of the goal, what is the impairment that we found, what kind of improvement do we expect to have with evidence-based interventions? And then what kind of functional relevance will that have for that patient? And how long is it going to take us to get it there? Well, that's right within the scope of our license. That's our professional practice. Okay. And so my idea that, Dee, I do strengthening for a lot of people, and I write a strength goal for a lot of people. You're right. I write strength goals for a lot of people too. But each patient in their particular situation with their particular needs and their particular goals and chronic comorbidities and support system and environmental setup, right? 1 floor, 2 floor, level surfaces, carpeted, tile, whatever it is, it's going to be different. We're not asking you to be a different therapist and dream up different goals. We all work on those same similar areas. That's within our skill set. That's our training. That's our expertise. But then tie it to why you need to do that for that patient in that situation. That's a great way to start.
Well, I think one of the challenges when we look at measurable and meaningful, Dee, is that of the 3 therapies, I would argue that OT got handed it on a silver platter in relation to the meaningfulness. I mean, how much more can it be than dressing and bathing and meal prep and all of these things that just scream functionally relevant to keeping people at home? But we know there's PT, and PT still represents, a significant majority of the therapy going on, and is particularly in home health. And yet what you and I see is a attempt at meaningfulness seems to be these long walks to some sort of arbitrary destination. And you know where I'm going with this. The infamous to the mailbox. Is that really... is that really sufficient when we're thinking about being functionally relevant? It's almost like we've turned our own profession into some sort of tour guide that now is taking them to the kitchen, to the bathroom. And I've talked about this. We always say to. Apparently we're never coming back. We're just going to leave them wherever we get to eventually. But what about for PT in particular would you hit on for that meaningfulness aspect? Because I think we've gotten kind of stuck in some sort of, tour guide mode now.
Yeah, well, we're not professional people walkers, and you're right. Gait is right up our alley, but ultimately we have to think what they need to walk for. Do they live in a residence where they need to get out in case of a fire? Were they the primary caregiver in their setting? Did they provide the transportation? Did they do the shopping? Did they do all the community-based stuff? And, there's a lot of research that says even from a cardiopulmonary point of view, we got to get up over 400, 500 meters, which puts us well over 1,000 feet if we want to consider it as a baseline community entry. So, I work with a lot of people who have their mailbox all the way down the limestone road. But then there's those people walking to the mailbox that just go into the front door because they have a slot in their door. And so my statement is walking to a destination is probably not that relevant unless you make it relevant for that patient. And ultimately, we all know that just walking to our mailbox and back does not make us community mobile, right? And that's one of the criteria for homeboundedness is that we are, the condition of participation, that we're homebound. And so, if we're trying to establish that this person can re-enter the community and their continued need for therapy can occur in an outpatient setting or another venue and not in the home, under the Part A benefit, then what are we doing to ensure that happens? And walk into the magic mailbox? Well, that's not going to be it. And just to make a comment about, your statement about the keys to the kingdom for OT. You're right, because nobody's going to go out into the community maybe for their mandatory face-to-face, naked, dirty, and hungry, right? So that's not going to work. So this idea that we have trouble writing meaningful goals for patients and what the end result of that goal will be for that patient really should be fairly simplistic. Why are you getting them stronger? Why do you want them to be steadier on their feet? Why do they need to go up or downstairs? Why do they need, why do they need this kind of endurance? That's what we need to answer. The why helps define the meaningfulness in our goal statements.
Well, one thing we hear very often whenever you or I talk about goals is the infamous, do I have to have short-term goals and long-term goals? I mean, I heard, I've been told by my agency, or I've been told that we have to have them, or my electronic medical record basically lines everything up in 2 columns, and I have to put something in both or it won't let me out. What are your thoughts about this time frame issue?
Okay, well, first of all, it's not a setting and it's not a regulatory issue. There is no mandates in the regulations, okay, that say that we have to have short and long-term goals. But folks, we all went through school. We were all trained in goal writing. And if you look at our professional guides to practice for physical therapy, the Guide to PT Practice 3rd edition, when we talk about goal writing, it includes time frames where we expect things to happen in, right? I mean, that's part of the assessment. I don't expect to see, a 3-point or a 3-grade change in manual muscle testing occur within a week for a patient if it's truly due to disuse atrophy, right? We're going to take a while to have to build that up based on what the evidence-based literature says. And so the idea that we have to have a time frame, and then if we're going to hold to that time frame, it should come from us intrinsically when we practice to the highest level of our license. Conversely, if we are using time frames, our long-term or discharge goals should not simply be cut in half for our short-term goals. If we're going to walk this distance, right, to the magic mailbox, 200 feet at discharge, as if that's all somebody who has to re-enter the community, if that's expected of them and that's their prior level of functioning needs, then at halfway we shouldn't expect 100. In fact, we may not expect any walking if the short-term goal is that we have to get them steady and stronger, right? To be able to do that safely and consistently, even when we're not there. So our short-term goals might be the building blocks towards the long-term functionality that we're expecting through the use of our evidence-based interventions and our our decisions and our choices and our disciplines, how we're going to get a person to that point and know that it's time to discharge them, right? Because they've optimized function or whatever.
Well, I think that your building block is a good example because I think sometimes with short and long term, it's just turned into this, well, they always line up. They're always on the same subject as opposed to what am I going to work on before we even try doing other things that are unsafe to do so maybe at this point because they're not ready. But I think sometimes when we think about plan, back to the P part of the note, I see a lot of our electronic medical records kind of do this in an order. So you've got subjective areas, you got objective, you got some box that says assessment, and then plan immediately comes with interventions first, frequency and duration, and then goals last. I kind of put it in a different order for you, Dee, because I think sometimes goals need to be dealt with first so we know what we're shooting for, and then say, now what is it going to take to get there? So when we're talking about what it takes to get there, frequency and duration I know is a hot button for both of us, but I'm going to poke it in your direction today. When we see records where it appears that it doesn't matter what's wrong with you, your leg's gone, you're blind in one eye, you had a recent stroke, you have diabetes, you got all four. You're still going to be 2 weeks sick no matter what we have going on with the patient. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, again, we are challenged and we are mandated to develop individualized patient-specific care plans. And so I can't fathom that an elective total joint for a guy that just finished 18 holes of golf on Friday before he went in for his knee on Monday electively to have it replaced from osteo is going to have the same needs as your blind one-legged stroke, diabetic, right? It just defies logic when we go to these cookie cutters. And so if we're developing our goals, what is reasonable to expect the person to recover to or to optimize them at and stabilize them at, right? And we pick the interventions that we know through evidence-based practice will help us get there, then we have to choose a frequency and duration that's consistent with where they are in that course of care. We have people that come right home from the hospital. We have people that come from the physician's office. We have people that left the ED and we meet them at their door. We have people that spend 30 days in skilled nursing or an independent, or 2 weeks in an inpatient rehab facility. Where are they in the continuity of that post-acute care? And that should be some sort of decisioning about what our acuity is. I would expect somebody that we're getting right out the gate from the hospital would be someone we'd see at a higher acuity. Goodness knows they'd get that if they went to an inpatient facility such as a SNF or an IRF, right? And so this idea that we have to see everybody a certain number of weeks for certain times a week is also another piece of the fallacy, because we can go weeks without seeing a patient within the episode. In fact, this is where, sometimes I really like, especially with some of my maintenance patients that I've got established on these programs and I'm now monitoring them and the program. I like to choose a utilization that allows me some PRN visits with the idea that, if I'm waiting for a piece of equipment to come in or I'm not going to be going back, but, since I'm not back for a couple weeks or 2 or 3 weeks, and it's not because I'm on vacation, it's because that's what's indicated by their course of care and where they are in that plan. Then if something changes between when I see you now and when I'm planning to see you again, I could pop on out there and not have to go get another order and enter it in the EMR for the physician to sign and add to a potential delay in billing of this episode of care for not having all the orders signed. So, I think
I got to interrupt you. I do, because you did a 1-2 punch with you. I'm sure more than one person's head exploded and then exploded a second time. You put maintenance and PRN in basically the same sentence. Two things that have been, wait a minute, I don't do that, I can't do that, I'm not supposed to do that. Those are two areas, maintenance in particular. Some folks may need additional education outside the scope of our conversation. Maybe we need to talk to Dustin about doing a maintenance piece, because people are very uncomfortable with that. But to our focus today with PRN, did you legitimately say therapy can write PRN visits?
Well, yeah, and for the record, I didn't say it in the same sentence. I think it was the same breath.
Well, they were close enough that I think I heard the thud from people from here. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, this idea that we can't, again, there's no reason why we can't. Now, are you taking responsibility for PRN visits? Well, you need to be accountable. Again, we need to practice to the highest level of our license. If we don't need to see somebody for this week of care because where they are in their program, okay, or we're waiting on a piece of equipment, I'm not just going to go out there and say, well, didn't arrive today, see you next time, right, and waste a visit. I mean, I think that's half our problem. We can use PRN visits. The nurses use it, and we see it with our sliding scale insulin patients and our wound care patients, and I'm not going to go over how you do it, but every EMR is set up to do it. Now, if it's turned off for therapy, yeah. But the question is, why are we not dictating our own utilization? Why are we mandated to go every week? Why are we not asking these questions? And why are we not developing plans that aren't so PU, but are actually, really perfect, that are personable, and that are, phenomenal? I know I couldn't find another P.
That is phenomenal. Starts with P. You're fine.
Yeah, PH, but it doesn't have the same. It's a F. So there you go. But anyway, I mean, why are we not doing that? And why are we not, practicing to that highest level of our license? I'm not exactly sure, Cindy.
But what we really wanted to do with all four parts of these, Dee, is to kind of dust off the cobwebs, kick the tires a bit, and say, some of this, simplify my documentation, is not about sending you a list of keywords to say or words to avoid or say it exactly like this and you can move on. It's about getting ownership back and saying we are skilled professionals. We know why we are treating our patients. We know what our purpose is. If we don't, that's a whole other conversation of why you're still seeing them. But to remind ourselves that maybe we don't still have a piece of paper and SOAP on it, but those are the fundamental areas. And we have to kind of get out of our own way and say, I do know these things. I am able to do this. And then I want to make sure those key elements represented on my evaluations, my reassessments, my visit notes, that we can move past the, if you didn't document it, you didn't do it, and say, we really are phenomenal, as you just said, Dee, and we want to make sure the documentation reflects that.
Right there with you, Cindy. Hey, it's been real, y'all. Thanks so much. Peace out.
There you have it, the plan portion of documentation by Cindy Kraft and Dee Cornetti from Cornetti and Kraft Healthcare Solutions. They're always helpful, always entertaining. Just kind of talking a little bit again about the live webinar event that Cindy and Dee are going to be hosting to answer your documentation questions is July 26th, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Just head on over to seniorsflourish.com/live to sign up for that. I'll send over a link and a reminder email. Make sure you don't miss it. Have your documentation questions answered. Anything from the day-to-day things, goal setting, reimbursement, regulations. They are the experts in the field. Also, while you're over there, why don't you pick up the free skilled terminology quick reference guide that I have. It has key phrases on there for billing and reimbursement. It's just a PDF you can print off and you can keep and reference while you're doing your documentation. So next week, we have one more sneaky bonus episode from the Ultimate Guide to Simplifying Documentation with Cindy and Dee. So make sure you check it out next week to get the bonus episode with some really great and helpful information about documentation. All right, guys, until next time.
This podcast is brought to you in partnership with the Senior Rehab Project at seniorrehabproject.com.